I sincerely hope that most of the child actors in this movie are not as traumatized as some of the audience members, because if they are, then holy shit. Hello everyone and welcome to the 3Style review for Evil Dead Rise. Now for a bit of background, I haven't actually watched any of the Evil Dead movies properly. I've seen clips and reaction highlights and stuff for Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2, and I started watching the 2013 version, but wasn't the biggest fan of it and I kind of dropped it, so that's where I sit going into this movie. Jumping straight into things, first off I want to talk about the direction, and the cinematography, and the lighting. Okay, jokes aside, everything about this movie on a technical level, it's flawless. It's perfect. In terms of the direction, the cinematography, just the movie looks gorgeous. It's lit so well. The movie's set at night. It's a very dark movie, both tonally and visually. The lighting here had to be perfect, otherwise the movie wouldn't have worked. A lot of these scenes, they're lit by candles, or maybe a stove, or a little lamp, or something like that. But in every single scene, it's used perfectly. The visual effects here are amazing. The practical effects here, I know I just talked about practical effects in my Renfield review the other day, but these are on another level. And aside from just visually, this movie's definitely a visual experience, but it's an audio experience as well. The soundtrack here, the score, is perfect to fit with the tone, the mood, the atmosphere of the film. And as well as that, just the sound design in general, there's so many just really creepy, unnerving sound effects that are used here for certain things. Whenever, a punch is thrown, someone is cut, slashed, ripped apart, the sound effects are just perfect. They're so immersive. So yeah, I spent this entire movie with my mouth open, just so impressed, terrified, and pretty disturbed at what was going on screen. So yeah, as an audio-visual experience, this movie is unmatched. Secondly, this movie's really creative with its kills, with its action, and with its gore. There's just as much care put into the specificity of the kills, the uniqueness of the kills, as there is to the actual visuals of the kills themselves. The script is really clever at setting up certain items, certain places in the apartment, in the corridor outside, that are ready to be used later. And you see a certain item, like for example a pair of scissors, gets left under a bed, and the camera focuses on that, and okay, that's going to come into play later. So throughout these action sequences, you're waiting for these items to come back into play to get used either by the demons or by our family. It adds to the tension of the action, and it gives that nice setup and payoff moment where the audience can recognize that and be thinking about it throughout the film. There's two particular scenes that hit really hard, one involving a cheese grater and the other involving a wine glass. Make of that what you will. I'm not going to spoil anything, but oh my god. Now, something that I think really deserves the spotlight, which I haven't seen too many people talk about, is how well the sort of classic horror movie tropes and classic Evil Dead tropes are blended with pretty great characters. The story and the characters in this movie are, especially compared to the 2013 version, much superior. Typically, you don't go into this type of horror movie expecting strong characters, a nice family dynamic, but this movie gives you both. And in doing so, it allows you to feel the peril and the tension even more, because instead of just waiting for these characters to die in entertaining ways, you want to see that. And when it happens, you enjoy it and it's great fun. But at the same time, you don't want these characters to die these horrible deaths because you're invested in them. Whenever a character gets killed off in just such a brutal way, you're struck between that enjoyment of the kill and at the same time, you not wanting that character to die. Which allows, all of these scenes to hit even harder than they normally would. And yeah, the characters are nice, the family dynamic's nice, but what really brings it home here are the performances. Alyssa Sutherland, especially as the mum, is fucking amazing. One of the best horror movie portrayals I've ever seen, probably. But yeah, the entire cast is absolutely amazing. Every single one of them, even the child actors who, child actors in horror movies they can be a bit iffy, but everyone does a really good job here. Now, in terms of negatives, I only have one real, standout one, and that's the opening and the ending of the film. The two scenes have essentially nothing to do with the main plot, and the fact that they chose these to bookend the movie, I found pretty strange. I saw Chris Stuckman say that he felt like they wanted to force a classic Evil Dead cabin scene, and in doing so, it just didn't really gel with the rest of the movie, and I agree with that. The scenes themselves were by no means bad scenes. They worked well on their own, like in a vacuum, but especially when you use them to bookend the movie, it just doesn't work at all. There's no relevance to the main plot. There's not even any relevance to, the themes that are at play within the movie. It just feels very tacked on. It actually reminded me of the criticisms that people had about Nope with the scenes with the monkey. So if you've seen that movie, then you can expect a similar sort of thing with the opening and closing scenes here. One thing I'll say though about the opening scene, that title card reveal? Yeah. Yeah. You know if you've seen the movie. Now, my second complaint, this is much more of a nitpick and something I found personally. I felt there were a couple of scenes, maybe one or two, where it felt like they decided to just straight up indulge in showing us these gory, graphic moments, where I feel a more subtle approach would have been more beneficial. If the audience was allowed to create their own sort of headcanon on how this happened or what happened when a character did this, then I think it would have been much more effective, especially a certain reveal in the third act where we see how a certain transformation goes down. And I think it would have been much more effective if we didn't see how it happened and we just got shown the end product and were left to our imagination. I think that would have been far more effective, and I think it would have made for a much better reveal. Now, finally, again, this is sort of the classic horror movie nitpick, but I couldn't think of a specific third point. The characters in this movie, they're dumb. They're gonna do stupid shit. You're gonna be questioning it. It's not gonna make any sense. But, I think we've kind of accepted that out of horror movies at this point. But I still felt like it needed to be mentioned. So yeah, overall, I am shocked with how much I love this movie. I was questioning whether I even wanted to see it, whether it was going to be my thing, but just the combination of amazing horror and action sequences, bucket loads of blood and brutal kills, incredible performances, and pretty strong writing. I'd say this is easily my favorite horror movie of the year so far, and I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up being my favorite horror movie of the year come December. Now, in terms of the rewatchability rating, this film does take a slight hit because personal preference, this isn't the sort of movie I would rewatch all the time. It's very dark, it's very intense, it's very brutal, and that's just not the sort of thing that I like rewatching over and over and over again. So with that said, I would give Evil Dead Rise an occasional encore. Doesn't take away from how much I loved the film, how much I enjoyed the experience, but it is what it is. Thank you very much for watching. Make sure you check out the rest of my reviews and my content. Links to socials are in the description, and I will see you guys in a blur.